Good evening, everyone. We'll get started. First of all, we'll do the Manjushri prayer on page 1. I pay homage to the Guru and Lord Arya Manjushri. Your intelligence shines forth like the sun, unclouded by the two obscurations. You hold the scripture text in your heart, symbolic of the seeing of all things as they are. Those who are caught in the prison of samsara are confused in the darkness of ignorance and are overwhelmed by their sufferings. In 60 ways with your speech you teach migratory beings, to which whom you are compassionate as to your only child. Your proclamation of Dharma is like roaring thunder, which awakens beings from the stupor of delusions, frees us from the iron chains of our karma. You wear the sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. Primordially pure, your princely body is the embodiment of perfection of Bodhisattva dwelling on the 10th Bhumi. I pay homage to Manjushri, who dispelled my ignorance, whose body is adorned with the 112 marks of a Buddha. With the brilliance of wisdom, O compassionate one, illumine the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence, wisdom, so that I may gain insight into the words of the text they explain there. Omara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana. Omara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara. Omara bhajana de amara 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 bhajana de amara. Omara bhajana de amara 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 bhajana de amara. Omara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara bhajana de amara. Omara bhajana Now we do the refuge on page 9. Zanje jada zoje jonala chanje badu dane jazunje dage je je ba de dage nala benje zanje raba jo zanje jada zoje jonala chanje badu dane Jazunje dage je ba de dage nala benje zanje drobajo. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment reached. By the merit of listening to the teaching, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all living beings. Samje tamje dewa da deve juda demba juje dunga da dunga je juda dawara juje dunga mebe dewa da me dawa juje nyere jada nyeda drave Tanya la nebara joje. May all living beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May all living beings be free from sorrow and the cause of sorrow. May all living beings not be separated from the bliss that is sorrowless. May all living beings live attachment, hatred towards near one's far by living with equanimity. May all living beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May all living beings be free from sorrow and the cause of sorrow. May all living beings not be separated from the bliss that is sorrowless. May all living beings live attachment, hatred towards near ones afar by living with equanimity. Now we do the Heart Sutra on page 5. To the perfection of wisdom, the Blessed Mother, I pay homage. Thus I have heard at one time, the Blessed One, Bhagwan, was dwelling in Rajgriha on Vulture's Peak, together with a great assembly of Sangha and a great assembly of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in Samadhi on the enumeration of phenomena called profound illumination. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, the superior Avalokiteshvara, was contemplating the meaning of profound perfection wisdom. He saw that the 5 aggregates are also empty of inherent existence. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, the superior Avalokitesha. How should a son or daughter of good lineage train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, superior Avalokitesha, said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good lineage wishes to practice profound perfect wisdom in this way, they should correctly view the five aggregates also empty of inherent existence. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, in the same way, all phenomena are merely empty, that is without characteristic. They are not created, they do not cease, they have no impurity, they are not devoid of impurity, they do not decrease and increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no form, no smell, no taste, no touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element and so forth, up to no mind element, and up to the mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, so forth, up to no aging and death, and no exhaustion of aging and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no cessation, no path, no exalted wisdom, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because bodhisattvas have no attainment, they depend on and abide on the perfection of wisdom. Because their minds are without obstruction, they are without fear, having completely apart, they go to the completion nirvana. All the Buddhas abide in the three towns, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, become manifestly perfect Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom is the mantra of great knowledge. The unsurpassed mantra, mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering. Because it is not false, it should be known as the truth. Mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Tadyata om gade gade bara zangade bodhiso. Tadyata om gade gade bara zangade bodhiso. Tadyata om gade gade bara zangade bodhiso. Tadyata gade gade bara zangade bodhiso. Tadyata 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 gade bara zangade bodhiso. Om gade bara zangade bodhiso. Tadyata 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 gade bara zangade bodhiso. Shariputra, a bodhisattva, mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom in that way. Then the Blessed One arose from the Samadhi, said to the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, superior Avalokiteshvara, well done, well done, well done, one of good lineage. It is just so, one of good lineage is like that. The profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught it. Even the Tathagatas will rejoice in this. The Blessed One having so spoken, Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, superior Avalokiteshvara, and all those gathered there and those that are of the world, gods, the humans, demigods, the Gandharvas, were filled with admiration and praised the words of the Blessed One. So welcome to the class. We have the great opportunity to spend time like this during this term on the last chapter of Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. Nagarjuna is a celebrated 2nd century Buddhist monk who is regarded as almost second only to the Buddha in terms of his writing, in terms of his authority. He was also prophesied by the Buddha, and he is remembered by all the in Mahayana Indian schools, as well as Chinese, Japanese, and Tibetan, all alike. Nobody is disputing the historicity of Nagarjuna, even though there's a lot of legends and mystical aspect of the story, but the historical nature of the Nagarjuna and his writings are very evident proof that he was an eminent, great scholar and realized master who probably would be easily forgotten. It wasn't his writings that has influenced the whole Asian civilization and Buddhist thought. And even some of the texts that are very unique to Mahayana Buddhism have been revealed until the coming of Nagarjuna, so it is said. So it is like the revealer of those texts that was somewhat kept undisclosed during the actual time of the Buddha itself, and have been therefore assigned for Nagarjuna to bring to light. So from that point of view, a lot of his writings are very original. And this, among the many different writings, this writing is not regarded as a highly philosophically difficult text, but nevertheless it has the recipes of entire Buddhist teachings in it, because he wrote this as a gift to his friend King Gautamiputra. It has 5 chapters, and we have read the first 4 chapters already. He wrote 100 verses for each chapter. So we are now starting with the verse number 401 tonight. And this chapter is called Bodhisattva's deeds or conduct. Bodhisattva refers to a person who, either as a beginner or as an intermediate or as an advanced or as highly realized person who has conceived the importance of selflessness, and who's disgusted with selfishness. Because people, when they enter a spiritual world, often they're disgusted with the world or its politics or power or violence or things that everybody can see out there as cause of their spiritual renunciation. Bodhisattva, of course, until a person adopts a bodhisattva's way of life, there's always element of that. Always seeing the problem is out in the world or in the people or out in one's outer social behavior. But bodhisattva is one who detects the selfishness itself as the cause of the root cause of all the problems, and who's completely convinced of its poisonness, rather than the world or samsara or people or bad behaviors or what they eat or what they drink as the real cause of problem. The selfishness itself is the root cause of problem. And not only that, those who then have conceived that the selflessness is the enlightenment itself. Selflessness itself is the becoming enlightened. Enlightenment is not a final finishing line goal, but stay selfless. Breathe selfless, remember selfless, and turn one's back to selfishness. So bodhisattva, whether it's beginner, must at least have that kind of departing point, whether you are a bodhisattva or not. And so what makes a person bodhisattva is one who's made a vow to adopt that as a way of their spiritual training. That is to lead a selfless life, not because it is received very well by people, but one has experienced all one's sufferings and problems are all created by one's own selfishness. And recognizing that is like seizing the real enemy. So bodhisattva is a warrior who wages war against this demon of selfishness and who can smell victory by practicing selflessness and who has made a vow formally in their heart or go through a ceremony. It doesn't really matter. There's two schools of thoughts. Some things you have to go through a ceremony. Even if you went through a very lavish ceremony, very colorful cultural ceremony, but if you didn't conceive that, then you got a little string to wear on your neck or whatever. They give a certificate. All these things just means nothing. You have to have a total conviction of the importance of selflessness and disgusted with selfishness. If you have that, then the ceremony is just to formalize it. Yeah. And if one were to take it, make the vow oneself, you can also do it, and that is quite loud. So, for starting from a beginner bodhisattva, and then bodhisattva, the beginner bodhisattva, always try to remember himself or herself to adhere to that bodhisattva's way of life. And then one who has become somewhat acquainted with that, they become what do we call intermediate bodhisattva. Intermediate bodhisattva is, you could call it senior practitioners. Among fellow practitioners, someone is a little bit more calm and very wise, very compassionate, very forgiving, very much that they actually are able to put it in their everyday life almost regularly, Maybe there are some lapses a couple of times in the mind, but quickly patch them up within 24 hours. But otherwise, always maintain that. That would be like an intermediate practitioner. Advanced bodhisattvas are those who have glimpses of benefit of selflessness, and they are completely blissed by this practice of selflessness. They're not just aspirers. They're just benefiters. They themselves are lifted by the selflessness to be of use to others. So the advanced bodhisattva still is among the ordinary people, among the practitioners who are advanced bodhisattvas. Never forget bodhicitta. And always be wary of the selfishness and clinging to the good one did. The advanced bodhisattva doesn't fail to do good, but he still had a danger of clinging to them. I'm good, type of thing. And then he is always seizing the moment to correct that. The grasping destroys the good. So the advanced practitioner is sort of in a kind of a point where they may realize the truth. Yeah. So the enlightened bodhisattva is one who has reached this insight meditation, who can see the emptiness of self, who's completely realized selfless, who has realized insight meditation. All the meditation that we do prior to that is calm abiding meditation. Calm abiding meditation, try to create a mind to be calm, to create a peaceful environment, mental environment, the tranquilized environment that mind may be able to seize the bodhicitta, selflessness. Merely seeing emptiness of self is not necessarily selfless, not necessarily bodhisattva bhumi holder. So it also happen Mahayanists can also have glimpses of that. But one who has this intent of doing all the karma body meditation for the benefit of others selflessly, because by virtue of his conception of motivation, he is a bodhisattva from the very beginning. But there are some who never get exposed to the bodhisattva's teachings. They may be exposed to the teachings of a lesser vehicle, which emphasizes one's own reaching of nirvana from samsara, and that's it. And through renunciation, through monastic practice, through asceticism, through severe discipline, and there are lots who practice that without being Mahayanist. Their realization of the glimpses of selflessness will be selflessness as an ideological framework of not seeing self, but not necessarily bent on to practicing selflessness to others, altruism to others. Bodhisattva is necessarily one who has renunciation by renouncing selfishness. Not necessarily samsara. He may have to stay in samsara. He may have to embrace samsara if that is going to more useful. So it's not about personal liberation, but one's usefulness in samsara. So bodhisattva is not keen to leave the samsara. Exactly opposite. He would have to completely change of heart. First he packed up everything and wanting to go. All of a sudden he realized, no, this idea of getting myself at the first finishing line is not the thing. I should stay behind everyone who is suffering as much as I am, rather than be the one to reach ahead or with others. So that's why bodhisattva have his main priority is selflessness. So that's just to as an introduction to this title of this last chapter, which is Bodhisattva's conduct. But this text, of course, continues to build argument where we left in the last week. It says that, however, last verse from previous chapter, it says, however, if from the unrighteousness of the world, meaning leading a very, very materialistic world, it is difficult to rule religiously. So if one is leading a very materialistic orientated life, one cannot practice spiritual life properly. So meaning that if one is attached to the niceties of this world, then it will always be an obstacle to your spiritual progress. Then it is right for you to become a monastic. So he was saying that to the king, that if you really see that the incompatibility of your spiritual practice with the worldly life you live, then you have to consider embracing a monastic life for the sake of practice. So that was already saying that you should take a role of a monastic. If one finds some may feel that they can do the worldly duties, minimizing the harm and greed and so on, but still maintain them without being too much troubled by that. Others find that they are like the hot and cold. One is this, other is this. They cannot really justify their spiritual practice in such a worldly life. And many struggle with that, and that's at that junction of the struggle. Then some people do choose to take up monastic life. So that's where we left. And now this chapter continues on that. Then, having become a monastic, you should first be intent on the training in the disciplines. So this is talking about, of course, even as a bodhisattva, you can have a lay bodhisattva as well as an ordained bodhisattva. So this talking about how effectively one can adopt bodhisattva's way of life as an ordained person. Most ideal, not just Theravada Buddhism, but even Mahayana Buddhism always says ideal way of life is a monastic, because then you can focus completely. you should endeavor to the discipline of individual liberation. So that's meaning take up the trainings of a monastic, either as a novice or as a fully ordained, whatever the case might be. Adhering frequently, meaning that one should always hear the teaching, hear the Dharma, hearing the teaching, listening to the sutras and the Vinayas and Abhidharmas, or all the discourses of Buddha through senior teachers who have heard it from others, and delineating their meaning. So this talking about one should commit to studious way to study something. Because a bodhisattva must always self-train, should always study and read something, listen something. If you're always reading and learning and studying something, training yourself, or you can call it keeping yourself up to the kind of current to remember, you should always be studying. No, shouldn't be saying, I finished my study type thing. A bodhisattva must always study to be able to be equipped to work and tame unruly beings. And we don't have skill to handle with many difficulties, and we are often realize we are stumbled by our lack of skill. That means we need to train by resorting to training. So that's why adhering frequently and delineating their meaning. Meaning you got to not just hear the teaching, but the reason, the meanings, and try to understand and argue and contemplate on the meanings. When it says adopting the discipline of individual liberation doesn't necessarily mean monastic. There are many lay practices, lay persons practice, 24-hour practices or particular precepts that one take on for life. There are practices even as a layman. There's a layman who takes one precept whole life, or one or two or three or four, all five, or all five just for 24 hours. Periodically, say during retreat. That's what we try to introduce. So doesn't mean that everybody has to be monastic to start with. They can start off with individual liberation, meaning individually tailored liberative art of training. Because a person who needs to take up, say, giving up smoking or drinking, that is a big problem in his life. Maybe he should take up just that, take refuge, and then take up that to bring some order and positive change in his or her life. So slowly, one try to take up little trainings with oneself. You don't make a kind of blanket training that everybody go in one. Everybody must tailor themselves and take on that by themselves, and then use mindfulness, how it is helping them to be useful and maybe skillful to help others. It doesn't mean that you are always orderly outwardly and then you're helpful to others. There are lots of orderly people, but they don't have help any other. So sometimes, it may be you are disorderly, create problem, but then that actually make you all to grow. And then to learn to grow from mistake rather than think you're pure from the beginning. Too idealist, You got to start somewhere messy. Samsara is messy all over, so to say that I'm not messy is pretty arrogant. There's not a single spot. There is no unsatisfactoriness. So everybody has his or her area of situation. They must own and then learn to liberate from that. And then individual liberation, meaning individuals know themselves what are their weak spots or erroneous spots. So a lazy person has to learn to take up some trainings that they beat that by making schedules and stick with them, and so on. So a person must adopt that accordingly. So that's first verse. Second verse goes on to say, then you should forsake these which are called assorted faults. So then when you become adherent of the training by listening to the teachings like we are, then you will know what are the assortment of faulty habits that one needs to recognize. One needs to highlight all the mistakes. Through emotional, psychological, physical, verbal, whatever behavior that we have, attitude that we have, they list with vigor. You should definitely realize those renowned as the 57. So he's going to list 57 assorted faults. What they are called like really destructive emotion, destructive habitual patterns, mental habitual patterns. So he lists those 57 trainings are bodhisattva who wish to adhere to become selfless. To bodhisattva to become selfless and useful to others, first he has to recognize all his assorted bad habits. And with those bad habits, if these bad habits are not recognized and then culled, they will always be a hindrance of being useful. They may even become cause of harm to oneself and others. So that's why these 57 assortment of bad habits must be recognized. And so we go through one by one. Because one need to recognize each of them and their relationship with the first to the second to the third, and how they are interconnected. Because none of these assortment of habits or bad or faults are independently bad. They are dependent on each of them, and so that's why it's good to know their similarities or dissimilarities, and how without culling the one, the other will not be able to control. So that's why this 57 has to be understood. The first is belligerence. See, belligerence is the disturbance of mind. It's mainly belligerence here refers to the agitated mind, towards something, and still you are some kind of a unintentional ill will towards something, and so your mind is very agitated. So you have an angst about it or them or him or her or oneself. So one needs to really recognize that. A bodhisattva must, if one has an ill will or kind of belligerence over something, that where the mind is not settling well and about that issue or about, and ignoring that and thinking that is a legitimate reason that made you angry, and therefore you still have this ill will going on that. That is basically unconsciously choosing to stay ill. So that's the first of the first behavior habits. I mean, everybody has this. Now, this is no single out yourself. Everybody got this problem. They don't even know they have it. But when they look at it, yeah, they're crook about that. They're not happy about him. They're not happy about that. And they still lump the reason why one is agitated with that person, And then one thinks it's entirely due to him, entirely due to that event. And one actually justifiably hold this belligerence towards them, yeah? So one needs to identify that. So it's a really good cause to meditate. Sometimes just meditate. I shouldn't let this build up or stay in my mind because it's growing in me. A bodhisattva must cull. First he has to know what is the cullable mental attitude. And he has to recognize that. And then meditate on its harmfulness, stupidness and uselessness and childishness, and why it's caused by self-cherishing. You can see selfishness is the root of it. How do you know you have belligerence? You are not at peace. Sign of belligerence is you're not at peace. You're not happy. You are not at peace with yourself. That's the first one.
So belligerence is not so spitey at the at the surface. It's kind of a like a small limp there. Don't know how you're limping, you know. Mental limp there, but you don't know why you're limping. The second one is enmity. You know? Enmity is now built up belligerence. Unresolved belligerence then becomes enmity. Second is enmity. The enmity is a follow-up, a roll over belligerence. Many belligerence, agitated mind. Then one is a resentment. Enmity means resentment. And what is enmity is hanging on to that, he says. And enmity is hanging on to that and not learning to part from that feeling or opinion or view about that. How could a Buddhist... They say some people do little things with you, but they help you so much. Some people do a lot of things, but they have no help at all. There's a person with enmity doesn't help anybody. That he doesn't have moral power or authority to help people. He's just he's limping. So he can't lift the bag. He drops the bag all the time. Because his heart is completely held by being hurt by the resentment. So you may do a lot of things to somebody or with somebody, but they never show any gratitude to people. Because of those who have some kind of resentment, they did it for you, but they're still resentfully doing it, and no benefit. So one needs to recognize, a bodhisattva must recognize, I need to spot the harmfulness of the belligerence, and untreated belligerence becomes enmity. Why? You are hanging on to it. Still, you resent about him, what they did 12 years ago, 5 years ago. You still lump them with that event. And since we cannot reconnect with them on any positive front, that's a proof, that's a sign of the enmity. We are still hanging on to that. They call post-traumatic stress. Yes, stress, indeed. Ever since then, one didn't de-stress it. One is still keeping on, hanging on to that. As one has multitude of reasons to hold on to that, and you will be given some trophy at the end. People unconsciously holding on to that. And the third one is concealment. And pretending that you don't have any resentment toward them. And or any other kind of wrong doings or wrong thoughts that you, as actors, you don't have. Concealment is hiding that you don't have any ill will. You might smile at them when you see them, but deep down you're hiding your ill will. So this is the sort of thing, you know. They say, oh, your customer is always right, but deep down you hate them. Yeah, you have to smile at them nicely, but deep down you don't. You still hate them. So that's concealment, you know. So the concealing takes place as a result of unresolved belligerence and resentment. What they call in the modern language is called repression. Concealment is repression. It's repress emotions. In the old, these are of course all language, but actually in modern it's called repression. Repress belligerence and resentment, and pretending that you are on good terms. You might smile at them, but deep down you hate them. So that's it's a concealment is hiding one's ill will. Hiding one's ill will. One has ill will, but one's hiding ill will. One is almost try to harm them in hiding, you know. And they don't want to be seen to be doing the harm. They want to be seen to be doing good outwardly, but they have completely, totally ill will in intent. Fourth one is the is malevolence. Malevolence is very strong malice, always looking an opportunity how to cause harm, how to cause disturbance, and harm, directly or indirectly. So malice, deep malice. See, malice is to clinging to do harm, clinging the wish to do harm, and ill will. You can see these things are all related, isn't it? All related. There's all those fours are very related. So if you get, first one is just a little agitation, a little belligerence. If you don't deal with it, then it slowly becomes enmity. If you don't deal with enmity, then it becomes repressed. Then you're waiting to harm, wanting to harm, and scheming to harm. And that is ill will all around. This karma of ill will is never detectable. People can't tell you, oh, you started the ill will there, finished there. No, ill will is continuous. ill will is just like baked, baked suffering. It's continuous. You know, if you hit a stone at a bird or a person, of course that's the beginning and finish of it. Physical harms are much easy to see, but very much finished. But mental stoning is really mentally stoned. Malice is mentally stoned. You don't need alcohol. You don't need to take drugs. People are stoned, meaning defeated by their own ill will about an issue or true person, and they are basically unconsciously ill, making themselves ill by that. A bodhisattva must be detector of these things. Yeah? Bodhisattva must be detective to spot these things in oneself and then wage war on them. That's enlightened warrior, He's got no one out there. He's a problem, That was before we discovered these things. Before we discovered Dharma, it was all out there, And if you seek conventional therapy, they will say, oh, those violent people, all those peer pressure, all these aggressors, all these abusive people, that's how they did to you. They'll make you believe that you have been a bit of a victim. and that's what as good as it can get. But when you come to Dharma, it actually makes us look deeper than pointing finger at out there. And now here exactly the Nagarjuna is making us to look the true cause of suffering. This, I would say, recipes of sufferings. In Mahayana, we say root cause of suffering is selfishness. But he's not here not pointing the selfishness yet. He wanted to see all the recipes, all the ingredients, all the food soldiers of selfishness. So we need to recognize these four as listed in that first verse, verse number 403, which lists those four: belligerence, which is agitated state of mind, which is annoyed or frustrated a little bit. Enmity is hanging on to that, hanging on to that, and then having a kind of a thought you don't want to change. You still think it's they wronged me type of thing. They wronged me. Yeah, they are the who wronged me. He's the one who did this. He's the one who said this to me. So that, and then, but when in front of them, you might be smiling. You might be act like a friend, but deep down, you're concealing your ill will. So the concealment is you're actually deep down. You really have this waiting to ambush them. And the fourth one is actually malice, to complete malice. So this four has to be recognized cognitively, consciously. Not always they are present. And sometimes we may not be able to spot them very well. But when you're in a good, calm, abiding meditation, you do with meditation regularly, then you will notice, my angst about that, or that episode, that's terrible. I'm still holding on to that. I was agitated then, I didn't do anything about it, and that's why it's still sitting here. I need to breathe them out. I need to bring in, positive things to heal these. Maybe through meditation and prayer, and then try to unsit these negative, assorted mental faults. Assorted faults, they call it. Nagarjuna calls assorted faults. Assorted means there are different assortment, different varieties. And this is the psychology of understanding the physics of mental sufferings. Almost like breakdown of psychological sufferings. So that's that. And then verse number 4, 404 goes to dissimulation is deceptiveness. The dissimulation is some kind of dishonesty. Whereby one's own unresolved issues inside one is deceived as one has a good reason to give them, you know. One thinks one is right, therefore you can keep this anger going on. It's really, you have many reasons to be angry. And you got friends who agree with you. So you are deceiving yourself, actually. But yet you think you're helping yourself to legitimize your reason to stay angry. So this is self-deception. And one thinks one is actually guiding oneself, but actually one is deceiving oneself. Yeah? Dissimulation is deceptiveness. Yeah? That is a very profound deceit. If somebody tried to sell you a piece of yellow metal as a gold, and you paid $20 or whatever, at least you lost $20. That's all. It's not a big deception. But if we deceive ourselves that I'm wronged by him, yes, I'm wronged by him, and then never saying it might be other way around, this is self-deception. Nobody will be able to detect that to us unless we ourselves are able to rise up and become alive. This is self-deception. It's not talking about dishonesty to other people trying to do this, but inside, one thinking that one has multitude reason to be angry and be different to them, be dark-faced to them, when actually deep down it is deceiving yourself as going to give you benefit. It's actually harming you many times from the day one. So when harm is thought as help, that's the highest deception, particularly when it's caused by oneself. This is happening when one is not consciously conscious. One is unconsciously conscious when one is doing that. That's called dissimulation. And deceit, that's the sixth one. Deceit is the crookedness of the mind. So the one is actually deceitful even to oneself. You know, one doesn't see a straight line, and due to this reason, one is deceiving oneself, and one doesn't even know that, and then say. If say you were, then it says jealousy. Jealousy is that towards people who you have been belligerent and enmity and resentment, and repressed emotion and ill will towards them. If someone is friendly to him, you are jealous. You're jealous that he likes him. He's not worthy of liking. Come on, ask me. Ask me. There's nothing to like him. Then one becomes their friendship jealous. See, jealousy is to be bothered by others' good qualities. You see, one is so easy to be jealous when you have all the above. All these things you have, this assortment of problem you have, then you are very susceptible to become jealous. If you don't have any of those assorted bad habits of mind, then when two people are harmonious, you rejoice them. Then you are mentally fit to be gladdened by people's harmony and friendship. See, jealousy is bothered by others' good qualities. We pray, may all beings have happiness, cause of happiness, in one moment. In another moment, we are not happy that others have happiness. So one has to be mentally aware, what's going on here? I was saying pray, may all beings are happy, but I didn't say may all beings are happy except him. But all of a sudden, we are jealous of somebody. It means we have deceitfulness of selfishness, because of the selfishness. If you have selflessness, then his happiness is your happiness. You won't have jealousy. And the eighth one is miserliness. The miserliness that you do not want to be generous and glad to their harmony, for instance. So you are miserly. You're miserable. Your misery comes from your refusal to honor their friendship, rejoice their friendship. So you're miserable. All of these eight, you can see where the misery comes from now. Agitation. Starting with that agitation, belligerence, then enmity, then repression, and so on. And then it becomes now cause of one's misery. And people are not happy. People are not sleeping well, they're angry or whatever it is. Because miserliness is refusal to give, like respect to the friendship between two. And one is jealous because of that one is misery. So the sufferings. A bodhisattva is courageous enough to recognize. It's like he's unearthing. Like he's an archaeologist. He's digging out some findings from what age he can date the bricks and like that. Now you can date your suffering. Oh, you look at this. Look at this I found. Oh, look at this. You got this one. So bodhisattva is the excavator is of his 51 assortment of cause of sufferings and recognizing them and numbering them. We'll exhibit them next time. This is the bodhisattva, the exhibitor of his own faults. He is very happy that he can exhibit this time. Now this time he really arrested the enemy. Previously he was pointing finger at the wrong place, wrong trees. Now he has actually spotted the true origins of sufferings. See? What is the bodhisattva's deeds? These are beginner bodhisattva. Beginners bodhisattvas is usually struggling with themselves. And no longer he's seeing others who is violent or abusive or aggressive or bad-mouthed. It never says this. It doesn't say that. The cause of suffering are bad-mouthed people or violent people, abusive people, difficult parents. It doesn't say that. The true assortment of faults are these mental negative emotions. So when one recognizes these one by one as we went through, that's the first 8, and then number 9 is non-shame and non-embarrassment. Non-shame is really in relation to affecting to oneself. Non-embarrassment means affecting to others. You don't have any concern for other people. However angry or however selfish one says, one doesn't even know how to feel shame or embarrassed due to these reasons. We're not talking about performing something in front of people and you might do the mistake. It's not that kind of. We're talking about the first 8, those 8 things, 8 assortment of mental faults that one has, but one is not even ashamed of them. One is not embarrassed to them. A bodhisattva would be ashamed that he has allowed that little frustration or annoyance to stay as a cause of resentment. He will strive for shame. No shame. A bodhisattva will have shame, will have embarrassment. How could I possibly be used to benefit others if I can't have an upper hand to overcome this? No shame and no embarrassment. Insensibility concerning oneself and others, respectively. The first one is insensitive, unsensitive to your own well-being. Because one is deceived by oneself, remember? Therefore one is insensitive. That's why no shame even for one's own concern, one's own well-being, one doesn't know. Because one is deceived as one is doing some good to oneself. As one has a right to voice or to be angry or whatever, like that. So not sensitivity, not even sensitive to one's own well-being, let alone being sensitive to others. So non-embarrassment, one can't, because of the deception, because of the deceit, as one is doing good by harboring ill will towards somebody, when it is all one's own destructive emotions that one is hosting and repressing. Bodhisattva is literate to know these things. Bodhisattva means he's literate to understand the suffering and its causes. He knows the doctrine of sufferings. He knows the causes of suffering. He knows the wrong views of the suffering and the cause of suffering. Now he's literate. Inflatedness. The inflatedness has some kind of arrogance. And arrogance, and then mainly some kind of jealousy, and have no respect to others. You can't see any qualities in others. Even if you have, you say, oh, yeah, but, you know. Yeah, but. He's very good, but. There's all this but. You couldn't give an honest praise to somebody. you only using this Tibetan word for but is called disjunctive conjunction. You're using disjunctive conjunction language. As a conjunction is to not combine for he's very good and he's very diligent. You don't say that. He's good, but you are disjunctive. you're trying to show the contrast. You see, when you're jealous. You don't have the generosity to say, he's diligent, he's generous, he's consistent. You might say, he's diligent, but he's controlling. So inflated is disability to pay respect to others. He's just completely disabled to pay respect to other people. And our arrogance is haughtiness, and one is arrogant about things one has, even though they're really nothing, but one sees there's a lot in them. So therefore, one is so full of oneself. And non-conscientiousness. Non-conscientiousness means due to those above, then one is non-conscientious, non-application in virtuous habits. You know, one doesn't output wholesome habits outwardly, behavior to soothe, to respect, to honor others. One is refusing. It's just that there's some kind of shutdown from showing courtesy. You can't show courtesy. No, say I wouldn't go there, or I wouldn't meet him, or one has this kind of standoffish feeling towards somebody, and one is refusing to put out any goodwill towards it. One almost try to disappear as soon as possible, and that means there's a lot of arrogance and resentment. All the above we were talking about, they all combine together because there's the assortment. They are building one by another. So. Non-shame and non-embarrassment is 9 and 10, and then inflatedness is the 11, faulty exertion to be polluted by belligerence. Yeah, faulty exertion means one is sometimes very, very diligent in the wrong reason, you know, that kind of, diligent is in the wrong reason, polluted by the former negativity, such as diligence, and so that's the 12th. 13th is arrogance, is haughtiness, in some things that one has, even though insignificant though they may be, but one is full of oneself. And the 14th is non-conscientiousness. One couldn't be bothered to output some courtesy or harmony or respect or gentleness or carefulness. One just wouldn't. And so those up to 14. So of course there are a lot of slight differences when we talk about pride and haughtiness and inflatedness. And some things in relation to equals, others in relation to juniors, others in relation to seniors, and so on. So one has to see what they are. For instance, it says pride has 7 forms, each of which I'll explain. So the idea of pride, the putting I, the feeling of I, this inflated sense of I, there are 7. There are 7 types. So it says, fancying that one is lower than the lowly, or equal with the equal, or greater than or equal to the lowly, are called the pride of selfhood. Pride of selfhood. Now that fancying that one is lower than the lowly, that one is actually acting as one is lower than somebody lower, actually is some form of pride. One is acting though that one is really, really respectful, respectful to someone who he naturally is lower for whatever reason, whether education or knowledge or experience or age or whatever it is, or equal with the equal. So that one actually is fancying means choosing that one is equal to somebody, even though they may not think so. You just deliberately make them feel that you're no less than me type of, you're no more than me type of, make them feel as competed by you. As they feel aggressed by your approach. They feel threatened by your equalness towards them, even though they may have a reason to differ. Or greater than the lowly, even though you are greater, generally speaking, maybe knowledge or status or position than the other, but you just inappropriately show how great you are before the lowly. Or before the equal, So both feel very, very condescended or overlooked or looked down upon. So you can see the varieties of pride could manifest. These are all due to the selfhood, because one is full of oneself. Yeah, when one is full of oneself, one will manifest in that way. So. Out of these 7, so to just explain the differences, the 7 differences of these, boasting that one is equal to those who, by some good quality, are superior to oneself. So now this is more like being competitive to those, competitive against others, who are actually superior to yourself, but make them feel threatened by you that they are not, That's called exceeding pride. The exceeding pride means pride that is not really justifiable because they are far higher in knowledge or experience than you. You're simply using it inconsiderately. So exceeding pride. Fancying that one is superior to the superior. Yeah, fancying that one is superior to the superior. Making them feel threatened and inappropriately threatened and cannot be really soft towards you because they feel threatened by you, even though you have no justifiable experience or knowledge or things, but one is necessarily envious of their position, and due to this reason, one is always sort of, one never have comfort to work under them, but always one doesn't approve of their status or their seniority or their experience, as we actually are just as good. So that kind of show is the exceeding pride, the pride that actually competes with the superior, So that's probably the first one. Thinking that one is higher than the very high is pride beyond pride. So that is pride beyond pride. It's almost like a unreasonable. Someone who may have just as 10 years experience and same credentials and so more different, but someone who's very, very little, not even half of the years of experience and knowledge, and then competing with someone very high, of course, that is called, that one is having pride beyond pride. And he says this pride beyond pride is like sores on an abscess. It's very vicious. It's a very vicious because it is like a burst abscess. Not only abscess hurts, but it's burst. And it is very aggressive, very disharmonious, and very, very unharmonious environment. You can see when someone is like that. You can see some competitive position, who is the, they always do that, who is the prime minister, who's not the prime minister. Australia is going through very interesting political. We hardly know anybody is eligible to be a member of parliament. It looks like everybody's not. Everybody is dual citizenship holder of some sort, which they all forgot. But they think, no, I'm pure Australian. No, I'm born in Australia. That sort of thing, No, you're not born. I am born. I'm born and bred here. My father is Australian. That kind of arrogance. No, you're not. Look at your color. Conceiving, so that's that. Conceiving an I through obscuration in the 5 empty aggregates. So now this is clinging to the I with one's body. Yes, it's like say, I'm me, because one is tall, one is strong, or maybe one is arrogant of one's physique, or one's status, one's wealth, or place one lives, what car one drives. People have all kinds of pride associated with this. No, I don't drive that kind of car, or no, I don't eat that kind of restaurants. There's all kinds of very many types, because which is called the appropriation. Said to be pride of thinking I, just me, I, full of I pride in relation to one's aggregates. How dare do you say that to me? Or so it doesn't matter you say that to him, but the kind of that I first pride. Thinking one has one fruits of spiritual path, this is sort of a result pride. They call result achievement pride. If you have gained some realization, one tend to have some kind of pride. Not yet attained in the pride. Not yet attained is the pride of conceit. So pride of conceit is you're just pretending that you have those things, but when you actually don't. So it's a conceited pride. Praising oneself for faulty deeds is called erroneous pride. Erroneous pride is, there's nothing to be proud of. One is full of mistakes, and yet one is singing one's praise. So that's erroneous pride. So at least if one has reached something that one hasn't achieved before, then there's something. But still the conceitedness actually spoils it, isn't it? Conceited pride means some people have so much, but they still have a lot of humility. They never say they are perfect, they are highly educated, they know everything. They don't say that, even though they may know quite well in that field of study. They still have more humility, and it benefits people. Person with humility, when he or she shows or shares, or it helps a lot of people. The conceited pride person, this is why there's a lot of the modern kind of education system is all about me. I'm specialist in this area. And if your student is about to become as good as you, you become threatened. Oh gosh, that kind of property write-up thing is cause of conflict, cause of stress. So conceited pride. And erroneous pride is you don't even have those qualities. And then another pride is which is we don't call it pride, but we call low self-esteem. We call low self-esteem in the West. Deriding oneself, thinking I'm useless, is called pride of inferiority. Inferior. I'm nothing. I'm useless. I have no knowledge. Oh. Such is the brief description of the seven pride. So this, like the seven pride, are all, usually we hear the pride is just one pride. Yeah, pride is one of the 5 root afflictions. Yeah. So in this also assorted faults of the mental, kind of assorted mental faults, it then breaks up the pride also in relation to the superior, in relation to the equal, yeah, in relation to the junior, in relation to things one is doing, in relation to things one is good at, things one has nothing, but still one actually pretend that one has, and then people who then bash themselves is also a form of pride, I'm the worst. I'm nothing. I'm useless. This low self-esteem is a form of pride in Buddhism, form of a wrong pride, because one actually is being too hard on oneself. This is a big problem, in the competitive world. All the pride are a problem of competitive world. If everybody is taught to have equitable qualities of Buddha nature, we all are same humans. Like His Holiness Dalai Lama always said that he always remind himself, I'm just one of the 7 billion person, and he just tried to look in the eyes of everyone he sees. This is just one like me, and all the differences, all the barriers, completely comes down. There's not even one that don't come down. Then there's already a very safe place, When people are discriminated by how many digits they earn, or where they live, or what they have, or that sort of thing, and then make themselves as important with the kind of what they have rather than what they do, and by the kind of material or certain positions or possessions as status, as their status, In old India, of course, there's a caste system, a problem. These days, a status problem. People think, I'm this blue collar, white collar, They talk about all kinds of way of middle class, lower class, upper middle class. All this class system is still there. Food, clothes, shelter, medicine, everybody has. It's pretty equal. From that point of view, very, 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 very equal, But we are not comfortable with equal, We want to be slightly above others. We want to look down on others. We don't want to approve others who are doing good. Oh, he's good, bad. How did he get wealthy? Oh, giving them no approval as they did hard work. We don't think they're hard work. We think, that this is all to do with the I clinging. The I clinging is causing all these kind of dissensions within oneself and with equals, with inferiors, with superiors, and so on. With the friends of friends, we are different. With the friends of someone we don't like, we totally different. So where does this discrimination comes? From this I first principle. I first principle. What here Nagarjuna divides them into 7 types of pride. 7 types of pride. So this brings us to the next one, verse number 413. So we have covered 15 of those faulty mental negative assortment. The 16th is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is to control the senses. Hypocrisy is to control the senses for the sake of goods and respect. So this is talking about pretense, some kind of show to others. Verse number 413. Yeah. Hypocrisy in order to gain benefit and profit or respect for oneself. Quite a lot of self promotion is basically like that. Is for the sake of that. It's not to. What is the intent of self-hypocrisy? So some hypocrisy might be justifiable if the intent is good, but hardly any. But most hypocrisy is to control the senses. I mean, outwardly one may behave as one is very, very well-mannered, but with intent of getting respect and honor and benefit for oneself. But if one's intention of showing well-mannered and very gentle, very kind towards others, his intention is for the benefit of others, but not to seek benefit for oneself. But the one who does it for benefit of oneself, then outwardly painting a very calm or peaceful or tamed or very disciplined behavior outwardly is the hypocrisy, is the kind of a double standard of what they call the lip service, and it may be displayed largely through physical and verbal behaviors. Hypocrisy is mainly physical and verbal behaviors, but intent is selfishness. Intent is selfishness to gain benefit for oneself. Now, for a bodhisattva, that is a calamity. It is a crisis. If for him to be try to gain benefit for oneself by displaying a verbal or physical behavior to gain benefit for oneself is of course opposite to exactly to benefit others. So this is more like now coming more like behavior rather than the mental one, these ones. Because when one has a lot of conceit and deceit in oneself, then outer behavior becomes very hypocritical. That's what we're talking about. And this shows very clearly. Next one, the number 17 is the flattery. Using flattery language. Flattery is to speak pleasant phrases for the sake of goods and respect. Yeah, one is physical or mental intent of hypocrisy, and using flattery language or very, very flowery languages to attract some benefit for oneself. So these are now assortment of behaviors. The bodhisattva must spot that I'm using flattery language with an intent to benefit oneself so that to deceive themselves how much we respect them or how much we care for them, when in deep down one has a selfish intent, So both hypocrisy and flattery with the selfish intent will be regarded will be recognized as outer behavioral habits people can witness. People may not be able to witness your intent, but one who bodhisattva who knows it has to spot it, that this flattery language or that I'm using, this particular manner that I'm showing is completely with a selfish intent. If he or she does not detect that, if he or she doesn't detect that, outwardly one is able to deceive others, thinking as you are very, very tamed or disciplined, or you're very pleasantly speaking, but your intent is otherwise. Now, this is a vow of intent, vow of intention. Outwardly, this is perceived very well. But the intent maybe is covetousness. Intent maybe is desire or gain, respect. So you can see the selfishness is still there. So outward behavior sometimes might be, maybe we have to do exactly opposite. Maybe we are very bad mouth for a change. And instead of using flattery language, but you really are screaming and yelling that they really have no respect for you. It's good for your ego. You can't get a lot of respect from using harsh language. And your intent is so that, I really want people to always look down upon me for my lack of qualities. So because he's not seeking respect, he wants to be disrespected by people because he can't do it enough by himself. He's always deceiving himself. So he might as well use others to correct him. So maybe use harsh language, use manners that are really, really, people may raise eyebrows, but actually to shame yourself, make yourself feel embarrassed. Maybe that's what bodhisattvas should do, because if the certain behavior like hypocrisy and flattery should be contained and restrained, because one might be doing that with intent to gain respect, then how do you stop hypocrisy? Just like the Kadamba monk, he was keeping the room very neat and clean and orderly. Every time when his benefactor is coming, he made a meticulous way to look very impressive. So he was very happy. Now it looks good. When he comes, he'd be very happy. I'm doing my retreat. He comes, everything looks fantastic. So a few times his benefactor came and visit. He did all that one after another, his benefactor come in and bring all the supply and food and very, very diligently, very respectfully and coming. And then he spotted his attitude. He says, I'm doing this very, very look neat and tidy and everything clean, nice, just so that he will be pleased with me and so that I will gain the benefit from him providing this. And so then one day, just before his benefactor arrived, he just threw everything on the floor, just kept the whole room messy. and when his benefactor arrived, he said, what happened? He says, this is actually I'm like this. This is I really am. Previously, I wasn't practicing. I was trying to hypocritically make this good display to impress you. So the bodhisattvas sometimes do this, Bodhisattvas, that's their intent, Because he can't, nobody can detect his intent. If he can't detect his intent, nobody else can detect it. Everybody say, wow, very good. Your retreat looks going very well, everything nice, tidy. But practitioner have to have a bit of a fight on his hand, Not always look very neat and clean and orderly, So it doesn't sound like samsara. Looks like he's already in nirvana. Looks like he's beyond problem. Yeah. So this is the one needs to recognize what is hypocrisy, and why one is doing the neat and tidy. Everything looks very well prepared, even though that is what is society warrants. But he realized the intent is wrong. His intent is just to please the benefactor, to gladden them, so that he gets a good respect and benefit. So he was able to detect that. Kadamba monks do this. And then number 18, verse number 14 is, he says, indirect acquisition. Indirect acquisition is it's form of persuading people to give things to you. Yeah, indirect acquisition is to praise somebody, say you're so generous. You're always saying how generous somebody is, so that you can get more. This is talking of selfishness for yourself, So, indirectly saying nice things to somebody in order to get for oneself, If you're praising somebody, the benefit of maybe tolerance or something, so that he practices tolerance at home or in his everyday life, that's a quite different thing. But instead of saying, "Oh, you're very patient to me," and so on, like, you actually, one's intention is to give in to you by your saying this. So if the intention of offering praise is to get, to praising to get, or what they're giving to get. If one is giving the praise to get benefit, then of course it is some kind of greed, really. Greed. Another's wealth in order to acquire oneself, Saying that, oh, that jacket you gave me was so warm, I'm still wearing it. Things like that. Almost that you're now due for maybe another thing, type of thing, So of course, really good to say thank you, but if the intent and the manner is done in a way that has a different agenda, a bodhisattva must be able to detect, why I'm saying this praise. Why am I praising this, What is the intent of praising this, Pressured acquisition, pressured acquisition, meaning you're putting pressure to people to give. Manifest derision. You're putting pressure. Putting pressured acquisition is manifest derision of others in order to acquire goods or wealth or money. So, if one is putting pressure, put too much pressure. Encouraging each other to give for a good cause is not pressure acquisition. But for oneself, for one's own benefit, if one is doing that, putting pressure to your mother or the father or to your friend or someone that putting pressure that they should give more than they are willingly able to give, is of course is a form of greed, in action. The bodhisattva learn to have small needs. Bodhisattva is one who has small needs and very few wantings. But the sign of bodhisattva in the making is fewer wantings, very few wantings and needs. Never ask more or never say, I don't have these, that sort of thing. Bodhisattva should always say, I already have this. I already have this. He should reduce his wantings and his askings. Bodhisattva who's increasing his wantings and askings is not a bodhisattva, really. So what we're talking about is the greed or wantings is so in unsurmountable. So you can see Nagarjuna went through the first list is all about hatred related, agitation, belligerence, and resentment, and so on, enmity, and repressed emotions. And then he went through various, particularly breakdown of arrogance, yeah? Now he's going through talking about using languages, flattery language or hypocritical languages, and now here he's talking about greed. So you're talking about usually we talk about 5 afflictions. So all these 5 afflictions are broken down to many different classes and sub-classes within them. So talking about indirect acquisition by praising somebody or putting pressure to get from others for oneself. And so verse number 415, which is the 20th, about desiring profit from profit. Desiring profit from profit is to praise previous acquisitions. So praising the things that one gained from before, and then try to get more from that for one's own selfish purposes. And then repeating faults is to recite again and again the mistake made by others. So then almost like being nagging what one mistake somebody made, it's already bad enough for the person to be remembering that. You don't need to make him feel worse by nagging at the person. So bodhisattva shouldn't be nagging at someone's mistakes at all. So if one does that, then that makes people feel really depressed. Got a lot of people depressed because someone is nagging so many times over one little mistake, and they just wouldn't stop. They just can't stand it, and a lot of people commit suicide. Yeah, because they just can't stand someone's negativity. They just wouldn't stop at all. So. A bodhisattva sees this as a cause of suffering and death and sadness and depression. Depression is usually their father or mother or the brother or the boss or the colleagues are so negative and so vehemently negative and constantly off against them for a little mistake once happened and constantly never letting go and refuse to talk or completely estranging you from them by their righteousness. So devastatingly harmful they are. But the sentient beings don't realize that they're doing more wrong for the alleged wrong they think other people wrong. And they're not even aware of that. This is the vicious cycle. Vicious cycle of suffering is one can't stop nagging at the one mistake of somebody as themselves. And they weren't even aware they were doing it, let alone deliberately doing it against you. But yet we're nagging at them and repeatedly, very negative, but very negative. Always negative. And negative means negating, as we have no good done ever done in the past, never will be able to do in the future, never could do even now. They're just so negative, and lots of negativities cause depression to people. They just lost hope that they can improve. They never were pardoned, the previous ones. They were never given hope or chance to correct them by using kind and encouraging words. They're very discouraging, very negative, very critical, very nitpicking. And these things, bodhisattvas sees them as the poisons in life and in relationships. So when the bodhisattva has to know this and see if we are doing this to colleagues or friends or children or parents, see, this is the reason why there's so much. They are abusing drug, they are abusing alcohol, because they can't hear positive words from us, so they're very nagged by us so much they can't stand us, for example. And they don't know where to go to. Particularly if they go to study, maybe they are also treated that way. So much negativities, and poor young people exposed to this kind of difficult people, they get depressed. And if they have company of somebody else who has also similar experience at home or at work or like that, then they consort themselves. Then they helplessly and hopelessly resort to drug, alcohol, not because they got so much money to spend, they're just masking themselves so that they don't have to hear this. They're sleeping in street. Why? Because they're so negative. At home they're nagged. It's good to be constructive, but have to be very important what one's standoffish kind of parental dictatorial role is never going to go well. Humility, kindness is the way to go. And with intention, not them and us, them versus us type of thing. Them and we are we, us, always us. You against me type of thing. There's only two people, there's a fight. There should be we, our home. This is my home. Live by my rule type of attitude. It's completely the seven arrogance there. One of the enemies arrogance definitely there. And they don't feel any grateful for all the time or generosity we gave, because if you say, this is my home type of thing, they straight away feel, gosh, I'm never meant to be here. Gosh, I'm not welcome here. Oh, gosh. They just can't wait to get out. So we have to be generous to parents or to family, or saying thank you, If be grateful, they wouldn't say mine. They would say our. So everybody is so interdependent on each other's harmony or lack of it. And so if there's one bodhisattva in one unit of group of people, would be good. If there would be two, it would be fantastic. Maybe one is better then. It at least keeps you honest. And not look out and say, no, I can never do these things. I'm not good at this. One shouldn't do that. Remember, it's one of the pride. I said, why not? Maybe I can start with small. Start with small beginnings, yeah? Start with small beginnings. Desiring profit from profit, is praised to previous acquisition, repeating faults, and reciting again and again the mistake made by others. Bodhisattvas should not pick on mistakes of others. They should feel compassion to the one mistake of others, and what must be like to be that, to be perceived and labeled and stigmatized and blamed by one person must be bad enough. Who needs more than one? They already had a belting already. They probably haven't recovered from that. Who needs to nag? Who needs to finger point? Who needs to do that? As if we have no faults our own. Most bodhisattvas, as soon as they see the mistakes of others, they see it's my projection straight away. And then, if not, what can we do to help them to correct it peacefully and patiently and gently? The bodhisattva is very, very aware of the suffering of the past mistakes of the other, and doesn't need nagger on top of that. Bodhisattva is suffering, is constantly crying for the suffering, or the suffering that he sees too much like repeating mantras. That's why we're given mantras to repeat. Instead of saying you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, it's a loving kindness to you, loving kindness to you, loving kindness to you. So Om Mani Padme Hum, Om, jewel in the lotus, Om, jewel in the lotus. You try to conceive the jewel of selflessness in the lotus of compassion for the others. So you're repeating these things totally to overcome these maligning words or malicious words that we utter again and again, repeating them as mantras, as they're so sacred, and using very foul words, use very demeaning words, very bad adjectives throw at each other, and then hurts a relationship or friendship built over years in no time, destroys in no time. A bodhisattva must see the sufferings and cause of sufferings of that are behaviors of the attitude, and attitudinal behavior have to be shifted. The shiftability, one has to first see what is the behavior of the attitude that one needs to shift from this to that. That this is not tenable to keep as a behavior of repeating someone's mistakes and barking at them. Even if one is not saying to them, one's still thinking like that. Oh, he's this him. If one is still thinking like that, that's a problem, That's why we try to meditate, not to think like that. Try to remove these thoughts, Try to replace them with a good thought. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free of suffering and cause of suffering. May this person be free of suffering and cause of suffering. May this person be free of faults and cause of his faults. And if you think like that, even he has faults, by the mantra, by the goodwill, at least it just screens yourself. Create a screen for you from our barking at them again. The mistake made by others, as if their mistake is independently created. Their mistakes are not mistakes unless we are there. If we are in the moon, how will it's going to affect? So if person create that in the moon, it wouldn't affect us. So there is no ultimately existing mistake. It's only relative to her, relative to what we want him to do, not do, makes his behavior dependent on our expectation or lack of expectation. If we didn't have that expectation, we would not be disappointed by his. It's not a mistake, is it? If somebody does that, you don't care. So that's not a mistake. Why? Because it depended on us, not independently on them. So therefore, how would it justify for us to barking or repeating and nagging at someone's mistake again and again? What does that do? We are creating wrongdoing again and again ourselves. We are not aware of it. We justify the wrong by doing wrongdoing. Bodhisattvas know that one wrong is enough. It needs to be supported, how not to suffer as the effect of that wrong. It's like trampling on someone who's fallen. It's not called helping them to get up. And to help someone who has fallen to get up, one needs to go down with them and give a hand as low as the way they are, not go above them and trample on them. Repeating mistake of others, nagging at them is like that. You're trampling on the person who's fallen and think you are helping them. Bodhisattvas feel this very abhorrent. Not that they have fallen by mistake, but we are throwing stones at them. Because those are equally mistakes. And the ordinary sentient beings are deluded by their karma and afflictions. They don't have ability to recognize this assortment of mental faults. They don't have the literacy. They haven't read Nagarjuna. They don't know which is which. So, with this benefit, we have covered up to 21, and verse number 416 is non-collectedness is inconsiderate irritation arisen from illness. So non-collectedness means very, very cluttered mind. Mind is not carefully analytical. So when you're lumping things together. So non-collectedness is inconsiderate irritation. Inconsiderate irritations are lumped together. When we lump things together, then it will make us sick. They say, you are sickening. But actually, we are sick. We are the one who's sick from that. We are sick from the lumping of them with us. The lumping of them, and one actually feel sick or ill by exposing one's attitude and projecting them onto the other. And it will make you sick. Yeah, if you give rise to all this list of assortment of negative thoughts that we have gone through, and because these are all lumped as justifiable reason for us to be irritated and inconsiderably irritated by the lumping all four together, and then that will make you feel sick. That will make you feel wronged by them, and therefore it's them who's doing you wrong. When actually it's us who's lumping all things, thinking it's them making us sick. Quite different thing, you know? Being able to distinguish these things are profoundly useful. It's like spacing what's theirs, what's ours, and what's lumped, or what is delumpable. We can delump them. And clinging to that lumped up irritation of oneself as them, which is making us sick, is the clinging to the wrong view, called attachment. Clinging to the wrong view. Clinging to the wrong view. One is so certain it is them. Clinging to attachment of the lazy to their bad possessions. Yeah, lazy, because we are lazy to know it's not like that. It's so easy to think it's them who did it to me. It's very lazy analysis, maybe lack of analysis, lazy kind of assessment. But bodhisattvas, it must be diligent to think, no, it's not like that. Argue against this lumped view and learn to delump them, and do not allow that cause to wrong oneself or one do more wrong things on top of that. So that's why talking about not nagging at it, not just verbally but mentally nagging at it. Some may be verbally very tight and didn't say much, but mentally nagging more than they call boiling. They call boiling. You know, anger is like boiling. You know, it's a slow cooker. It's nagging. Mental nagging is much harder than the verbal nagging. You know. So one has bad possession. One becomes possessed by this evil spirit now. But one has bad possessions. Bad possession in Buddhism doesn't mean some evil spirits from out there coming. Then all negative things come to oneself because one is attracting them. All the unfortunate friends or company or doings all happens in no time because of the bad possessions. All the mind is one goes to places, one seeks the kind of people, and then one is completely seized by such situations. So this assortment of negative emotions and attitudes and undetected behaviors, the bodhisattva is deeply we were talking about he finds the repugnant nature of his own mentality due to selfishness. Now we were not just saying selfishness, but what are the workings and doings of selfishness? The attitudes, the behaviors, the outputs, and conducts, and reactions, and overreactions, and perceptions. This very much reveals to the bodhisattva. So now the bodhisattva is courageous to unearth these things. It's not recognizing the root cause of suffering is the cause of suffering, remember? Now for the bodhisattva, this is a breakthrough. To break through, to recognize them and identify them, and then become very psychologically very interested into the physics of psychology of suffering. Why the body is so stressed and painful or tired or exhausted. It is beaten up by all these kind of attitudes that are pushed in this body. This body is bag of suffering that one unconsciously packing these kind of attitudes. So one has to now consciously dig them up, excavate them, and air them, and bring them out, and prove of their lack of inherent existence, and make them impermanent. Assortment of bad attitudes means these attitudes are not independently existing ones. They're not truly existing ones. They're not somebody else has mined them or hide them into us. These are just advantageously acquired. These are advantageously temporarily acquired in absent this unconscious conscious state. When we are conscious, we will be able to meet them, and we can spot them, and we can melt them. Basically, we can see them dissolve into humility. All the 7 prides become humility. Not just humility before some people, but humility with equals, humility with the young ones or new ones or somebody. Some people only humility only with few people, but not with anybody. So it's a strange kind of humility. Maybe that's another form of pride. So one begin to cultivate how to cull and remedy those 7 types of arrogance by practicing humility, maybe through bow down, or some small practices to rehearse, to train us to recognize how cardinal an affliction arrogance is. And then do certain remedial practices like prayer or prostration or bow down or simply showing courtesy to your friends in a way, and learning to acknowledge one's own selfishness or inconsiderateness or aggression or those things to make them feel, oh, this person now recognizing his own aggression. Now this person is explaining his own greed and so on, and then make them feel that you are actually like a courageous bodhisattva who's actually claiming the cause of suffering or aggression that they felt is now is taken back by us. Taken back, meaning apologize. Apologies. Being able to apologize is a humility practice. It's a wholesome cause of happiness. Humility is not a humiliation. For an arrogant, humility is a humiliation. for the person who really practices real humility, it's not a cause of humiliation. It's a humiliation, but to suffering. It will humiliate your suffering. But to you, it's good when you practice real humbleness. When the humility is a wrong motivation, of course, then it's humility. People say, I don't want to practice this. Why should I do that to him? So they feel humiliated that they have to show humility to somebody when you don't have when the attitude or intention is wrong, selfishness. When the intention attitude is a really, really like courageous warrior who wanted to uproot the root cause of his suffering, for him showing humility is a good help that empowers him to humiliate his suffering and its causes. And that will be end of it. In the monasteries, sometimes people, if they did something wrong or something, the person has to do prostration while everybody's sitting and chanting. He has to, throughout the whole chanting, he has to do the public prostration. They usually will announce, they'll announce, oh, he did this, therefore this is his cleansing. he will do this. They do this practice. The intent of the master of discipline or whoever makes him to do is to help him to succeed to humiliate his own arrogance, not to make him suffer. It may look like he's really humiliated in the front of people for a little while, but later on they feel so helped. They don't feel beaten or don't feel punished as such. If the intent is with that, the person never feels harmed. person feels completely helped. But when the intent of the person who's imposing some form of mild punishment is to make them feel guilty and make him suffer for his crime, that kind of attitude, it will not correct the person. That's why the modern correction facilities doesn't really correct the people very much, because there's not a lot of enlightened attitude in delivering those services, even though they're spending like $300 or more for each prisoner. For every one single day they spend there, that much they have to, the government is spending. But the actual helping that the people in there are not really receiving, because the whole doctrine or attitude with which those services provide is very different. Those people who are prison guards, they're always there, really security guards. There's macho guys walking up and down. They feel like they're going to sort of hit you or beat you or seize you, arrest you or chain you, and that's it. Maybe there's a little bit of kind of a reformation that are happening. It's possible. Some places they are introducing meditation for the prisoners, and when the facilities or institutions are a little more open-minded, they're learning to do that. At the very beginning, on the surface, it look like humiliating for the people, but their very real intent is to correct these people to become decent human beings. That actually is the overall intention of the institution, and the actual the very objectives is actually very noble. But how it is delivered to people are different. So one also need to recognize what kind of avenues there are that the Bodhisattva who identify his or her own assortment of negativities of mental, emotional, that are destructive, behaviorally, physically, verbally, and then learn to cull them. And then pay heed to one's mind to have a literacy, I would say, has an aptitude to recognize these things. Seems very much the essential messages of these verses. Thank you. So we'll conclude here with the dedication of merits on page 11. By the merit of these, may we attain the state of omniscience, defeat the evil enemies of defilements. May I liberate all sentient beings from the samsara oceans, the turbulent waves of birth, all death, sickness, and death. By listening to the excellent and precious Maya and her teaching, whatever boundless merit I have acquired, may all sentient beings become precious and stainless vessel to retain the excellent and precious Maya and her teachings. May the supreme and precious bodhicitta take birth, you had not done so, where it has been born, may think as Vedantly without degeneration.